you take your seats, please.
Yeah, I'm right next to you.
Sit it down. No, I want to see your beautiful face all throughout. Take your places. Sunny faces.
Take your
No buns, no popcorn?
Keener.
No popcorn?
Hey, Mayor. You're Administrator. How are you? It's always... Really? Mayor, have a seat. Have a seat. His worship.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Okay, I think the high fives have all been done. Yes, excellent. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. It is my absolute pleasure to be your MC for this morning's announcement. And Minister Boissonnault, thank you very much for including me in today's activities. My name is Beth Potter, and I'm the President and CEO of the Tourism Industry Association of Canada, formerly the head of the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, and it's so great to be back here in Niagara and so many of my Ontario peeps. And the very first Minister of Tourism that I ever worked with is sitting right here, Minister Jim Bradley. So. Before my remarks this morning, I would just like to acknowledge the land that we are gathered on is treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations of the Haudenosaunee and the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. L'Association de l'Industrie Touristique du Canada représente les intérêts de tout l'écotourisme, du tourisme au Canada. Acting on behalf of thousands of tourism businesses, TIAC advocates for this once $105 billion a year industry by championing policy and regulatory measures to help both domestic and international tourism in Canada prosper. Tourism is a key driver of Canada's economy. The sector contributes to our vibrant communities and cultures and plays an essential role in promoting Canada as a world-class destination for both leisure and business. Historically, the sector represents 2% of our annual GDP, and 2 million people were employed in tourism prior to the pandemic, with close to 750,000 of those jobs being directly resulted from tourism spending in our country. Unfortunately, the tourism industries were the first hit, the hardest hit, and are among the last to recover from the global pandemic. Just as international tourism arrivals and spending reached record heights in 2019, the number of international tourism arrivals to Canada dropped sharply in 2020, when the pandemic resulted in travel restrictions at home and around the world. This resulted in a drastic drop of spending from that $105 billion down to $53 billion in less than 6 months. Dans les 3 dernières années, les entreprises du tourisme et les principaux acteurs de l'industrie ont uni leurs forces comme jamais. Ensemble, ils ont fait face à des défis économiques jamais vus, d'un océan à l'autre. TIAC and our industry partners are incredibly grateful for the government's support during these difficult circumstances. Its creation of crucial funding measures during COVID-19 served as vital lifelines to tourism businesses that were struggling to retain staff and cover basic costs such as utilities and rent during a time of unparalleled economic uncertainty. Minister Boissonnault, the work you and your cabinet colleagues have done has proven to be immensely valuable to our sector's recovery efforts and is greatly appreciated by our many stakeholders. Nous sommes également heureux que le gouvernement du Canada reconnaisse qu'il nous faut un engagement à long terme. Celui-ci permettra au Canada de maintenir et de promouvoir le développement de destinations touristiques de classe mondiale pour les années à venir. We are therefore thankful for the federal government's support for the tourism industry that was announced in the federal budget earlier this year. These key 3-year investments, specifically the $108 million to the regional development agencies and $50 million to Destination Canada, will bolster tourism activity in local communities, help attract major international conventions, conferences, and events to Canada, and support the modernization and development of new, more competitive tourism assets for both Canadian and world travelers to discover. While TIAC has been pleased to take a leading role in advocating for these and other vital supports, unfortunately a good number of challenges persist, both post-pandemic. The tourism labor force is returning but still falls short of the needs of many tourism employers, while increasing operating costs, inflation, and climbing interest rates are a pressing concern for tourism operators who sacrificed and took on mounting debt loads to ensure that their small businesses survived the significant economic impacts they each faced. To this end, TIAC and our industry partners are very grateful that the government officially recognized the need for a new federal strategy for the tourism sector. We know Canadians love to explore and experience their own country. We can see that today. And that we have what the world wants. Again, take a look, evidence right there. So we look forward to learning more about the government's vision and embrace the opportunity to work hand in hand with the Minister of Tourism, other cabinet ministers, and federal officials as we now embark on the new strategic path toward full sector recovery, growth, greater competitiveness, and resilience. So, with those opening remarks, I would now like to turn the podium over to Mr. Vince Badaway.
Well, good morning. Here we are in Niagara once again on a beautiful, beautiful morning. I was actually worried. Last week we were here, there was a bit of smoke. This week, this morning, or today, it was a bit of fog, but I think it's all cleared up for us. Well, Randy, welcome back.
Thank you, Vince.
It's great to have you back. It's been a year, but it's great to have Minister Boissonnault back here to Niagara. And it's great to be here with you today celebrating the launch of this federal tourism growth strategy. I do want to recognize a few members, a few colleagues that I see in the audience here today. I see MP Tony Baldinelli from Niagara Falls. Tony, welcome. We also have a member of Provincial Parliament, MPP Wayne Gates. Wayne, welcome. And of course, as mentioned earlier, our illustrious Chair, Jim Bradley. I'm very happy that Beth did do the land acknowledgement today. It's so important that we do recognize our Indigenous heritage, but equally as important is our present and the future that our Indigenous peoples have for this great country, especially here in Niagara, with a great population here from the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, as well as those from the Mississaugas of the Credit. As I mentioned, Randy's no stranger to Niagara. He was here last summer and met here in the region, here in Niagara Falls, and discussed priorities for the strategy with our great tourism partners here throughout the region of Niagara. I see a few of them in the audience today as well. I see Anthony Nunziata. Anthony, welcome. Janice Thompson, welcome. It's great to have you here. And of course, with that, our biggest salesman for Niagara, Mayor Jim Diodati, the Mayor of Niagara Falls. Jim, it's great to have you out today. At that time, we had a very productive discussion, and we took the minister to meet with some of our fantastic groups, our partners, such as our grape growers, and we enjoyed delicious samplings of Niagara's finest, not only throughout Niagara, but in particular over at Niagara College's Culinary School. And Randy had a good look and a good lesson in terms of what's happening over at Niagara College as we speak. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, here in Southern Ontario, where most of us grew up, where I grew up, and continue to make my home, tourism roots run deep for each and every one of us. In one way or another, we all had an attachment to tourism, and quite frankly, still do. And so the health and well-being of our tourism industry is vital to the health and wellness of every community throughout the Niagara region. That's why we've been so grateful for federal support that we received, especially in the last year, over the last several years as well, especially during times of challenge, that being the pandemic, which is top of mind. And now we're coming out of it. And again, with the federal supports and supports from you, our partners, it's going to be great times ahead, and Randy will speak more about that shortly. As a border town known for its attractions, I think we all understand that we were hit, and we were hit hard throughout the past few years. And it's time to come out of it, and it's time to open our front door to welcome the world. But thanks to significant investments through the Tourism Relief Fund, many crucial tourism businesses here in the region, including Indigenous tourism, were able to innovate, to invest into new experiences, and frankly, we're going to see a lot of that strength and growth well into the future. And it's not just the Minister of Tourism working to cement Niagara's place as one of the country's premier destinations. This spring, the Minister of Transportation committed $22 million to improving docking space in the Welland Canal, enabling the city of Port Colborne to accommodate more and larger ships, including those belonging to the growing Great Lakes cruise ship industry. A new market for the Niagara tourism. We have truly applied a whole-of-government approach to making our tourism sector as successful as possible. Today, I think we're better positioned than ever to help fuel Canada's visitor economy. And of course, when you think of Southern Ontario, yes, Niagara Falls is top of mind. Niagara Falls is, in fact, a brand known worldwide. But our region has so much more to offer. Pristine beaches, Great Lakes sport fishing, world-class wineries, sport tourism, family resorts, heritage sites, unique retail and culinary experiences, world-class theater. Did I mention the Welland Canal? Recreation trails and fantastic events and festivals. And to each and every one of you, I want to thank you, because most of you work daily to ensure that Niagara, once again, welcomes the world. There is so much to do here in the region, and a great deal of credit belongs to each and every one of you. And why, quite frankly, it's so appropriate to launch this national initiative here in Niagara. A nation, a region, working together, collectively, once again, opening our front door to the world. I don't have to tell you that tourism is essential for the vitality of local businesses and has made us a top-ranked international destination, bringing millions of visitors to our region annually. And it's the beating heart of what makes this place great. Bolstered by the new federal tourism growth strategy, I'm confident Niagara's tourism industry will grow even stronger and add to the nation's tourism industry that will strengthen even more so well into the future. So in conclusion, I want to take this opportunity to thank all the partners who work day in and day out to strengthen the experience of our visitors. The world does need more Canada, and together we will work hard to welcome the world. I thank you.
Thank you, Vance. And your comments about partnership are incredibly important when we talk about the tourism industry. And I just want to say that to me has been one of the major silver linings coming out of the pandemic, is the collaboration that really resulted in the industry coming together to move the needle forward. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. He's over here, he's like ants in his pants trying to, he's ready to tell you all about the new federal tourism growth strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Minister of Tourism and Associate Minister of Finance, Mr. Randy Boissonnault.
Thanks, my friend. Let's hear it for Beth Potter, everyone. And look, what a beautiful day, what a beautiful sight. I was talking with Tony yesterday, and he said, Randy, I hope you bring the sun with you, because we've had 2 days of liquid sunshine and lots of it. So, Your Worship, Jim Diodati, thank you for being here with us. Parliamentary Secretaries, Badaway and Biddle, otherwise known as Vance and Chris in my world, and our national leaders, Beth and Marcia and Keith and Susie and Phil, thank you for being here. MPP Wayne, thank you for joining us. Jim, thank you for your leadership. We stand on the shoulders of giants on today, a day like today, and I too want to acknowledge that we're here on the unceded traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to work here today. Anthony, thank you for joining us. It's always great to be here. Janice, you were on the call last night, a little bit of a prequel to what's going to happen today. Do you remember, friends, what it was like 2 years ago when we were doing these meetings on Zooms? I even met somebody here who the last time they saw me, April, it was you, the last time you saw me, I was in a mask. And you said, like, that's where we've come from. David, I think I met you first on Zoom, and then we changed the lights on the falls a couple of times ago. But how far we've come in such a short amount of time. And we could not have met in such a delightful area without the masks, without the social distancing. And it was hard then to imagine what the post-pandemic period would feel like, or what it would look like. travel restrictions were still in full swing. Our tourism industry was barely making ends meet. Anthony had me up on the bridge showing me how the border was closed and telling me to lift the restrictions. Remember that day? That was a good day. And trying to keep businesses afloat while leaving the sector and advertisers jumping ship and people across the border not really sure when they would ever be able to come back and see us again. So my friends, it has been quite a journey, and what a long way we've come. And we know now what it feels like after a pandemic, and it feels great. And I can tell you that our government's priority has been to move our tourism industry from recovery to prosperity, and together we've done just that. So how do I know? Well, let's look at the numbers. Last year, 2022, tourism supported 1.9 million jobs in every corner of the country. It contributed nearly $38 billion to Canada's GDP, and it generated $94 billion in revenue, mostly for our small and medium-sized tourism businesses. In short, by December of last year, active tourism businesses had recovered to 93% of 2019 levels, and jobs shot up 90% of pre-pandemic levels. And after the lockdowns and border closures, this is the stuff that comeback stories are made of. But that said, we're not stopping at just coming back. We're also capable of so much more. New destinations, more visitors, and more investments in tourism to power our communities from coast to coast to coast. And there's only one way to do that. The time has come to take an active and intentional approach to tourism. Our peer nations, such as the United States, France, the UK, and Australia, have all identified the advantage of having a concerted tourism strategy. Ils ont compris toute une grande chose. Le tourisme, c'est un gros moteur économique. They all understood one thing, that tourism is a major economic engine. Ici au Canada, nous avons procédé de vastes consultations pour bien faire les choses. L'été dernier, j'ai sillonné le grand pays et j'ai entendu les acteurs du tourisme, les gouvernements provinciaux et territoriaux et les partenaires autochtones me parler des défis et des possibilités qui s'offrent à l'une de nos industries les plus uniques et les plus extraordinaires. So my team and I have been hard at work with all of you here today to build a strategy that looks to the future and that reflects each of you in its design. Because at the end of the day, this isn't my strategy or the government's strategy. It's our strategy. It's a strategy that belongs to the sector. And the Government of Canada will be there to partner with you along the way. But we're not there to tell you how to do things or to have a monopoly on the answers or on your innovative approaches to grow this wonderful sector. We need you always at your best so that you can show Canadians and visitors from around the world how to create memories that'll last a lifetime. And so that is why we're here today. Because Canada has what the world wants. Let's start with wide open spaces and adventures in the great outdoors. The longest #1 coastline in the world at 243,000 square kilometers, bordered by 3 oceans. For nature and sport enthusiasts, we have it all. Top-ranked international ski destinations, 294 ski resorts, and over 4,000 kilometers of slopes. 48 national parks, along with 19 UNESCO Biosphere Reserves, 5 UNESCO Global Geoparks, and the world's longest hiking trail at over 28,000 kilometers. Canada also hosts many Ironman competitions. I know because I did one in Penticton, but also in Muskoka, Calgary, and Mont-Tremblant. And for those visitors looking for authentic Indigenous experiences, Canada is ready. 1,900 and more Indigenous tourism businesses across 42 subsectors, more than 600 First Nation, Métis, and Inuit communities, and 70+ Indigenous languages spoken across Canada. The 2021 Best Countries Report also ranked Canada #1 for overall country for quality of life and human rights. And did you know that Canada also holds the top 4 spots for North America's most livable cities in the Economist Intelligence Unit's 2022 Global Livability Index? With all that to offer, the time is now to position tourism to reach even greater heights. And that is why today, on behalf of the Government of Canada, I am joined by so many colleagues to officially launch Canada's new Federal Tourism Growth Strategy. Applause line. Canada 365, welcoming the world every day. And this strategy is our roadmap for the way forward. And it's our goal to grow the sector by 40% by 2030. So what does that mean by the numbers? 2019, we had $43.6 billion. The 2030 goal is $61 billion in GDP. That's over $160 billion in revenue. And my friends, that will be at least 85,000 more jobs just in the next 7 years. And I can tell you, each priority in this strategy has been selected for its power to transform Canadian tourism from a business as usual into a global powerhouse. From Tofino, British Columbia, to St. John's, Newfoundland, we heard 5 themes coming back time and time again. First, we need to invest in our existing tourism assets and build new ones. And David, you've been doing a great job here in Niagara to do just that. Thank you, and I know more to come. And I can't wait every time to come back to see what you and the community have built. So as Beth mentioned, in the budget, we've already started to get to work on the strategy with $108 million for regional development agencies, and that money is going to go to communities from coast to coast to coast. And second, we need to embrace recreation and the great outdoors by capitalizing on the unique draw of each of our 4 seasons. So let's talk about Canada's Trails tourism strategy that will leverage trails and related infrastructure as critical tourism assets that will bolster tourism by focusing on 3 elements: making sure we have a well-maintained network of trails and outdoor spaces across the country, ensuring that these trails can meet the demand of visitors, and that they are appropriately promoted at home and abroad. Third, we need to work together with our partners to grow Indigenous tourism experiences. Indigenous tourism is reconciliation in action, or as one young outfitter told me in Calgary at my first convention with ITAC, it's reconciliation. And it responds to increased, steady interest expressed by international visitors to Canada. And so the strategy will include next steps on the Budget 22 commitment that will invest $20 million over 2 years to support Indigenous tourism businesses through the Indigenous Tourism Fund. Indigenous tourism business owners will also benefit from the $108 million to regional development agencies. Our 4th priority, to attract more business and sporting events, and we want those travelers to spend their money here. And we're going to invest $50 million in Destination Canada through Budget 23 to scale up efforts to bring more businesses, conferences, conventions, trade shows, and other events to Canadian venues. And finally, we can strengthen federal coordination with partners by aligning government policies and priorities to grow tourism. And so we are launching the Federal Ministerial Tourism Growth Council. The council, which I will chair, will help improve coordination and communication across the federal government and appropriately elevate the visitor economy in the federal decision-making process. So friends, we got it done. And look, just to give you an example of how the council is going to work, already into the budget, we have $1.8 billion over 5 years to the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority, CATSA, to increase its level of service, strengthen security measures. And if you've been to the 5 largest airports in the last 2 weeks, you'll see that there's already a new verified traveler program, and those lines have opened up ready to receive people. Now, for those of you listening for more numbers, tourism is Canada's top service export, full stop. Putting tourism front and center is not only the smart thing to do economically, it's also the right thing to do socially and culturally. Many youth, newcomers, women, racialized Canadians, 2S LGBTQI+, and Indigenous people, rural residents, and those with disabilities depend on tourism to make rent and pay the bills. Tourism can empower individuals to stay in their home communities, whether it be rural, remote, or Indigenous communities. In short, creating winning conditions for tourism requires a Team Canada approach. My friends, the time is now to come together and combine forces across all orders of government and throughout the industry to power the economic engine that is tourism. From wide open spaces to bucket list adventures, authentic Indigenous experiences, world-class sporting and business events, festivals, and so much more. Now, when I look in front of me and I look to my left, I see architects of growth. And my friends, fellow architects, let's get to work. Today, let's get the word out. Canada is open to welcome the world every day, 365 days of the year. Thank you. Merci. Hi, hi.
Thank you, Minister. And I know that everyone sitting here today and everyone watching online is anxious to dive into the strategy and to see what it means for their particular part of the industry. But as somebody who has been at the table talking with you and your team about what was needed for Canada, I just want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for hearing what we identified as priorities. And thank you for making sure that your colleagues in cabinet came along for the ride. So it's really, really important. I'm really looking forward to working with you and the Growth Council. So thank you for that. Now I'd like to introduce one of somebody who's no stranger to all of us, Mr. Chris Biddle.
It's probably interesting in the minds of the tourists behind us, like who are all these strange people in suits and don't they know there's a heat warning on today? But in that spirit, I'm going to make the second best announcement of the day, that my speech will be the shortest. I won't read this, yes. I'll start with something that Jim Bradley tells me not to do, but Jim Diodati likes to do all the time. I was born and raised in Niagara Falls, and woo, one person. And I say that, live in St. Catharines. St. Catharines, a great place. But I say that because my summers were spent working here when I was going to school. I was thinking about it today, how far I've come from a student working at the Sheridan, having my lunch at Oaks Garden, looking on the falls, to being here for an important announcement. But I think all of us in this audience can understand how the tourism industry in this city alone has changed over the last 30 or 40 years. How it used to just be come for a couple hours, look at the falls, and leave. But now it's spending nights. We see the hotels that have been built over the previous few decades. And we need to see more of that, not only here, but across the country. Niagara Falls is a model for the rest of the country, but we can do more here. I know we're meeting later with the wine industry, but if we look at places, I know Randy mentioned France and other countries like that, they see their wine industry as a cultural jewel, a gem, and something to be developed, and that's something that we need to act on, something we need to do so that we can grow this industry. And that's what this strategy does, about growing the industry here and beyond, and seeing those benefits beyond Niagara. So thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you, Randy, for this incredible announcement. And I'll leave at that, and hopefully keeping my title as the shortest speech of the day. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. We'll let you have that title.
Someone can challenge me.
Okay, all right. All right, well, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Marsha Walden. She's the president and CEO of Destination Canada, and a great partner to the industry, and somebody who will be diving into this strategy and implementing it in the work that she and her team do. So, Marsha, the podium is yours.
Well, thank you, Beth, Honourable Minister, and honoured guests, and good morning, tourism friends, colleagues, partners, businesses, stakeholders, many assembled with us today. We've heard that today is a new chapter for tourism, and we know that travel is different now, and travelers travel differently now. So our minister has listened to the voices of tourism right across this nation, and along with our industry partners from coast to coast to coast, we've worked together as an industry to make united recommendations to help form this strategy. Our minister has now defined a pathway to propel a thriving industry in future, an industry that is ready and able to regain its foothold as one of Canada's primary economic engines, but also as an industry that both strengthens the social fabric of our country here at home and is vital to our national identity abroad. In every part of our vast land, tourism generates wealth and well-being for people and places. Our sector contributes disproportionately, as you heard, to Canada's GDP, and is Canada's largest service export, to a much more favorable balance of trade for our nation. But as a sector, we have an opportunity to become much more competitive, more prosperous, more resilient, and provide more net benefits to Canadians, economically, socioculturally, and environmentally. And this strategy will help us get there. Nous avons collaboré étroitement avec nos partenaires de l'industrie de tous les pays pour formuler des recommandations communes sur cette stratégie et nous nous réjouissons d'œuvrer de concert avec vous, Monsieur le Ministre, et l'ensemble de notre industrie à la transformation du tourisme. Destination Canada is very privileged to have a key role in supporting the future execution of this new federal tourism growth strategy to help deliver all those benefits to Canada. As a federal crown corporation, we have the mandate to sustain a vibrant and profitable Canadian tourism industry, and we will get there again. I think we're especially excited by the new Ministerial Tourism Growth Council, which I think will help elevate Canada's global competitiveness by bringing together a more strategic and coordinated approach to tourism policy making and industry development across the many, many ministerial portfolios that have an impact on our sector. So we're excited to see that take shape. And I think we should all feel deeply proud of our sector, which is continuing to emerge from the worst crisis ever. Looking at an industry that was on its knees just 2 years ago, I feel confident that our tourism sector, the businesses and employees that work in it are now heading into a much brighter future. We expect domestic tourism to have fully recovered across the nation to 2019 levels this year. We expect U.S. travel to Canada to recover by next year in 2024. In fact, it will surpass previous levels next year over the course of the year to 112% in our view. And that will be followed by other international markets and travel for business events, all back in shape by 2026. I think this strategy puts wind beneath those wings and will take us to even greater heights by 2030. Congratulations to our minister and his colleagues for reshaping, I think, how travel and tourism will be supported in future in this country. The tabling of this strategy is very timely in my view. Many of us in the industry are preparing our business strategies for 2024 and looking out long term to 2030. This will guide us, unify us, and anchor us in the development of those strategies. So thank you, Minister, for your continued support of our sector and of Destination Canada, and for the much needed investments in rebuilding the success of our sector. Today it's important that we unite, not just at the federal level of government, but all levels of government, to power the economic engine that is tourism and to strengthen Canada's voice around the world. Encore, mes félicitations, Ministre. Merci.
Merci, Marsha. Et votre français s'améliore. And Marsha, you're absolutely correct. This is a federal tourism growth strategy, but it's going to take all of us at all levels of government and across all of the suite of sectors that make up our industry to make it a success. And speaking of that, our last speaker of the morning, I would like to very much introduce Mr. Keith Henry, head of the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, very hot today. Memo, no dark suits on hot days. Anyways, I just want to start. I'll also acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. And certainly it's an honor to be here today. My name is Keith Henry. I'm the president and CEO of the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, representing about 1,900 Indigenous owned and operated businesses located all across this country, about 500 of which are right here in Ontario. The Federal Tourism Growth Strategy is a very significant welcome to us in the Indigenous tourism industry at a time when Canada is talking about reconciliation and the importance of that. We have to provide Canadians tangible ways to help contribute. And there's many ways we can do that. But Indigenous experiences, culinary, cultural centers, outdoor adventure, learning on the land, these are the things that help Canadians truly learn together and support reconciliation. What the growth strategy does is signal, for the first time that I've seen in this industry in many, many years, a significant policy commitment as one of the priorities to really grow Indigenous tourism. I was here in the last iterations of tourism strategies with the federal government, and never has it been so clear that it will take to grow Indigenous tourism. So as the industry grows by 40% by 2030, we expect to triple from our $1.9 billion in revenues from 2019. That means significant economic benefits for many of our communities, significant new jobs for our Indigenous families and entrepreneurs, and significant new investments from private, public sectors, along with our Indigenous communities, to grow up to what we hope is 2,700 businesses by 2030. So today is a big celebration for us, but again, the work will just begin as this strategy hits the ground now. What will it actually mean? How can we help our entrepreneurs and our businesses continue to excel and meet consumer demand? And how do we actually move forward with this? So the last thing I'll say is that I really appreciate Minister Boissonnault and all the MPs, and of course, nice to see the mayor. Says I dressed appropriate today, so thank you for that. I personally feel I should have wore your color, not this color. But I will say that it does take a team to build Indigenous tourism, no different than any other partners around the location today. And we are going to need all hands on deck if we really want Indigenous tourism to be the world leader by 2030. So we're very happy to see the growth strategy released today, and I just want to say thank you for having me here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Wonderful words, and again, echoing those notes of partnership. And in that, I just do want to make sure that I acknowledge everybody that's here today. You know, we've got our national partners, the Tourism HR Canada, the Hotel Association of Canada, incredibly important partners at the table. We've got representation at the destination level with Janice and Anthony and Mayor Jim Diodati. But we've also, you know, this is part of it's almost like it's part of the draw when you come to Toronto. So thank you, Andrew, from Destination Toronto, for being here as well, and from our colleagues at the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, where, you know, this really is a representation of partnership. You know, and also, you know, while this is being released by the federal government, you know, we've got it's an all-party piece. You know, and so thank you, Tony, for being here. Thank you, Wayne, for being here. This is something that we've all collectively worked really hard to make sure that this strategy kind of crosses party lines. So my appreciation for that as well. We're now going to do a quick picture, and then we're going to open it up for media questions, if I've got that right. Yes, I do. Okay, so we're just going to do a quick picture, and then we're going to open it up for questions.
Okay, we'll do speakers and then we'll do nationals. Okay, who's ready for photos? Niagara? And team? Here we go. Come on in. They'll share them all. Right here. Ready up.
Who's first? So we're all not looking at different
Anthony.
phones. Who's first? Okay.
Okay, right here. Out here. Record. Perfect. Got one, Phil? Okay, come on up.
Great.
Nationals.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. You want me to use the prop? I can't do that in the House of Commons. Tony, I can do this here, just not in the House.
As long as you're reading from it. If you're reading from it,
It's
reading from it, it's not a problem.
GHL guy. Okay, let's get in here.
Yes,
Keep the
absolutely.
MPs here, Nationals plus MPs. There we go. Smile. Right here. Jim, come join us. Come join us, Your Worship. Yeah, come on in.
I voted against it.
Put the two guys. No, stand up. Oh God, he loves this. He's such a ham. Oh God. There we go. Oh, you gotta continue it, man.
Help me up. Somebody help me up. Ham it is. Better than a turkey.
All right, thank you for your patience while we took the pictures that will commemorate the morning. And now I'm turning it over to the back for media questions. So go right ahead.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. I will start beginning in French and it will be followed by English. Alors, mon nom est Marie-Pierre Barry, je suis la directrice des communications du ministre Boissonnault. Nous allons maintenant ouvrir la parole pour les questions des médias. Nous allons commencer avec les médias qui sont présents et après prendre les questions des médias qui sont sur la ligne. S'il vous plaît, avant de poser votre question, veuillez donner votre nom et le nom de votre média. Et vous avez une question, un follow-up. So we will now open the floor for questions from the media. We will begin with media that are in person and follow up with media that are on the line. Before asking your question, please introduce yourself and the name of your media outlet. And then you have one question, one follow-up. Thank you very much.
Can I start? Great, thanks. Hi, my name is Al Sweeney. I'm with CHCH, the TV station in Hamilton. Question for you, Minister. You dealt with the elements of the strategy. Can you give us the headline on this, the summary? What is the strategy and what's it going to do?
Tourism is big business. We need everybody rowing in the same direction, and we're welcoming the world every day, 365 days a year. And our appeal on July 4th is to our American cousins across the border to come back to Canada in numbers greater than they did even in 2019, because they don't know what we've got now. People went into their basements and their homes during the pandemic. Canada has tooled up, and we're ready to show them everything that we have. 67% of our tourism market comes from American visitors. And after that, it's the UK, it's France, it's Belgium, Germany, Japan. We want our American visitors back. We want our international visitors back. And all orders of government and this entire tourism industry is ready to deliver.
Great, thanks. So one more question as a supplementary. There are a number of figures here on the value of the tourism industry. Ms. Potter mentioned that before COVID, it was worth $105 billion a year. Are we back there? If not, how long is it going to take to get back to where it was before COVID?
Great question, and I'll answer, then Beth can tell me if I did okay. But look, we're at $93 billion by last year's numbers, so we're not there yet, but we're close. And I remember my first TIAC meeting, and Beth was telling the room that we wouldn't get back till 2025, maybe 26. And now both TIAC and Destination Canada's numbers show us getting back there, if not by the end of this year, certainly by Q1 of 2024. And this is interesting because a lot of our Asian travelers haven't come back yet in the same numbers. So imagine that we get back to 2019 levels without those visitors. When those visitors come back, we'll be at a new plateau, even greater than we were in 2019. So the recovery will happen faster than we anticipated, and definitely by 24, both domestic and international markets should be back. Beth?
Thanks, absolutely. I completely agree with your numbers. And what the strategy is going to do is not only, yes, visitors are returning, but there are a lot of things that we need to work on in the industry in order to ensure that we continue to provide fantastic experiences and those life-changing moments for visitors when they come to Canada. And so the strategy is designed for us to do just that, to make sure that we're providing an amazing workforce, that we are investing in our attractions, that we are supporting the creation and the evolution of new businesses and new attractions, including Indigenous tourism as well. So the strategy is a toolbox for us to continue to grow. And getting back to 2019 numbers is only one thing. Remember too that we lost 2 years of receipts. So it's not just getting back, it's growing forward that we really need to be concentrating on.
And I think there's something else. I know there was a meeting at which I threw some numbers out, and I thought Marcia was gonna fall over when I was talking about doubling the number of visitors. We were throwing out numbers, right? We were looking at the strategy, and it's not a numbers game in terms of visitors. It is about, though, making sure that the visitors that we come here respect the land, respect what we have. And so you can see that we're going to grow by 40%, but we're not growing the labor force by 40%, right? So we're going to bring more people here who will spend more when they come here, and we're going to get smarter about how we tool up in our tourism businesses. Phil Mondor is here from Tourism HR Canada. We've got Susie Grenell here from Hotels and Restaurants Canada. And why is that important? Because we're all part of this. And the government doesn't have all the answers. And quite frankly, before the pandemic, not many of these organizations would have reached out to the federal government on a daily or weekly basis like we did during the pandemic and post-pandemic. And so the links that have been made during the pandemic are important links, and they're the kind of links that exist in the United States, in Germany, in Japan, in the United Kingdom. And so the fact that we're all attuned to the fact that every time an American visitor crosses that border and comes here to Canada, the money they spend gets booked on our books as an export. It's found money. So let's be smart enough to go get more of that found money. It's our #1 service export as a country. Think about that. In my province of Alberta, after oil and gas, the #2 export for the province is tourism. Same thing in British Columbia. And so we've got to get our total GDP from 2% to a much higher number. And when we're talking about growing this sector to 40%, that's how we're going to get there.
Hi, it's Ray Spiteri with the Niagara Falls Review.
Right.
Can you explain to me how Niagara fits into this growth strategy? How important it is that Niagara is successful for this strategy and for these investments to work?
Well, I'm sure it has something to do with Mayor Diodati's energy and the great work of Vance and Chris. But you have, and Anthony, and the whole gang. You've got the #1 crossing of Americans in the country right here. Most Americans cross the border into the country right here in Niagara. That's why we're here today, because this is an icon for Canada. It's an engine for tourism, and this city, this region understands tourism. And look, Anthony and I have talked about this. You've got 14, 15 million visitors. That could double with the right regional infrastructure, with the right assets, with the right asks. And so my goal is to say to people, let's do this together. The feds are here to support you, but let's get the city, the region, the province, Indigenous partners, business partners all rowing in the same direction so that that 14, 15 million can actually grow to 20 million plus. I mean, let's talk about air access. Let's talk about train access. Let's talk about moving people around and really lean in as a G7 country when it comes to understanding tourism. Maybe the other top line revenue is we used to take tourism for granted. We used to think that tourism is just something that happens. This is now an intentional, active approach to getting more visitors to Canada, full stop, and Niagara is key to attracting those visitors.
Is there a certain percentage of the investments that are dedicated to Niagara and Niagara Falls, or is it just generally across the country?
Well, Niagara is part of Ontario, and Ontario is the largest province, so you've got the largest share of the 108 million. But when it comes to competing for international events, the 50 million that's going to go to Destination Canada, where are people going to want to have their conferences, their events, their meetings? Niagara's going to get its fair share and then more, I think, from the Ontario basket and certainly from the national basket. But that means that the destination marketing organization here, that means that Janice and others have their work cut out for them. I know that Andrew's going to do his best to get many meetings to go to Toronto. That's the game. But guess what? Canada wasn't at that international level competing for those conferences and conventions. We will be now. And when we get the conventions piece right, then we're going to be able to get into sport. So an exciting time ahead. I hope you all have shades because the future's bright.
Thank you very much. We will now move to question from the line. Do we have any question from the teleconference line? Going once, going twice. The future is so bright. The minister just put his shades on.
Merci tout le monde. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
you.
Niagara.